The Galactic Empire was a giant that had ruled the stars for thousands of years. Its banners stretched from one side of the galaxy to the other. Great fleets of warships carried its will to distant worlds, and every planet that resisted was crushed under its power. To many species, the Empire seemed unstoppable. Some called it the eternal ruler of the galaxy. To live under its flag was to live in fear, but also in order. No one dared to challenge its strength. Kings, queens, and warlords who once fought proudly now bowed their heads before the Emperor. But there was one place the Empire had never touched. At the edge of the spiral arm, far from the crowded trade routes and shining core worlds, there lay a cluster of stars wrapped in mystery. These stars were marked on every imperial map with a single word: forbidden. It was not an order from the Empire itself, but a warning passed down from ages long before the current emperor's reign. Generations of rulers had seen the mark and chosen to leave those stars alone. Some said it was superstition. Others whispered of terrible wars long forgotten. The name of that place was simple: Terran space. No imperial fleet had ever entered it. No diplomat had ever been welcomed. No trade routes crossed its borders. To most of the galaxy, humans were shadows, half-believed stories told in whispers. Merchants spoke of strange weapons and reckless courage. Soldiers told tales of humans who never surrendered, who fought even when hopeless. Some called them legends, born from fear. Others thought they were ghosts of a lost species clinging to a dead world. But the truth was simple. No one knew, because no one had returned once they crossed that line. When the new emperor rose to power, he was young, proud, and full of fire. He believed himself greater than all who came before him. Where past rulers had been cautious, he saw weakness. Where others had respected warnings, he saw only chains holding back his glory. The emperor stood in his golden throne hall, surrounded by advisors and generals, and declared, "There will be no forbidden stars in my empire. Every world shall kneel, every border shall break. Terra is no exception." Gasps spread through the chamber. Some officials trembled. Others lowered their eyes in silence. But none dared oppose him aloud. The emperor's word was law, and his pride would not be questioned. The order spread quickly. Imperial admirals, though uneasy, prepared their fleets. Hundreds of warships gathered at the edge of Terran space, their engines burning bright in the darkness. The banners of the Empire shone like suns, and their commanders boasted loudly that this would be an easy conquest. "Who are these humans?" they mocked. "Old ghosts, nothing more." Yet among the common soldiers whispers grew. Veterans remembered the stories. They had heard of fleets swallowed in silence, of captains who vanished without trace. Some prayed quietly in their bunks, asking the stars for mercy. As the fleet stood ready, the border of Terran space stretched before them. No ships guarded it. No warning buoys blinked. Only the silent stars waited. It seemed too easy. But silence is not always safety. Sometimes silence is a warning louder than any voice. And so the Imperial fleet crossed the line. Engines roared. Warships pierced the darkness. Pride carried them forward into the unknown. The galaxy held its breath. Alien worlds far and near turned their eyes to the forbidden border. They wondered, would the Empire finally break the ancient silence? Would the humans reveal themselves at last? The first step had been taken, and once taken, there was no turning back. The Terran borders had been crossed, and the galaxy would soon learn why they were forbidden. The Imperial fleet moved deeper into the silent stars. Hundreds of warships spread across the dark, their hulls glowing with the symbols of the Empire. To the admirals, it felt almost insulting. Such empty space, no resistance, no defenses. The commanders joked in their grand halls, speaking with arrogance. "These humans are nothing," one admiral said. "They hide behind stories to frighten children." Another laughed, raising a glass of fine wine. If they truly existed, they would have already knelt before the Empire. But not everyone shared their laughter. In the lower decks, soldiers sat quietly staring out at the endless black. The silence unsettled them. No stations, no patrols, no signals. Only stars, cold and distant. The emptiness felt unnatural, as if someone was watching them from the shadows. Then, on the third day of their advance, the silence broke. Sensors picked up movement. A single ship appeared at the edge of their formation. It was small compared to the massive Imperial cruisers, but it moved with strange grace. Its dark hull blended with the void, and its engines burned with a cold blue light. The admirals laughed again. One ship, that is all they send? But before they could order its destruction, a voice filled every channel. Calm, steady, human. You have crossed into Terran space. You will turn back now. The words echoed across every deck of every Imperial vessel. Soldiers froze, officers frowned, admirals smirked. Bold, one admiral muttered, but foolish. They replied with arrogance. We are the Empire. No, border can forbid us. Leave or be destroyed. There was silence. For a long moment the small ship hung in the dark, like a lone wolf facing a pack of predators. Then the voice spoke again, colder this time. You were warned. This is your last chance. The admirals grew impatient. They ordered their guns to fire. Beams of energy and storms of missiles streaked across the void. The small ship twisted and turned, moving with impossible speed. Shots that should have been certain hits missed their mark. The Terran vessel darted between explosions like a shadow made of steel. And then it struck back. A flash of light tore through one Imperial cruiser, splitting it in half. The soldiers aboard barely had time to scream before fire consumed them. Another ship followed, exploding into debris. The fleet roared in anger, pouring fire into the lone vessel. But the human ship was not like theirs. Its weapons cut through Imperial shields as if they were paper. Its movements made mockery of their tactics. Within minutes, a dozen Imperial ships were gone, drifting wrecks in the silence. The admiral shouted in disbelief. Impossible. How can one ship do this? Fear spread through the lower decks. Soldiers who once mocked the legends now whispered prayers. The name Terran suddenly carried weight, and then as quickly as it had appeared, the Terran ship pulled back. It did not chase. It did not gloat. It left behind only wreckage and silence. But before leaving, its voice spoke one last time, calm and sharp as a blade. Turn back. Terra's borders are forbidden. The Empire's fleet stood broken and humiliated. Never before had so many Imperial ships been destroyed by a single opponent. Never before had they faced an enemy that struck with such precision and confidence. Admirals argued. Some demanded they press on, claiming it was only one ship. Others whispered that if one vessel could do such damage, then what waited deeper inside? The Emperor's order was clear. Advance. Pride demanded conquest. But in the hearts of many, a shadow of fear grew. For the first time, the Empire had been warned, and the warning had teeth. The fleet reorganized. Repairs began. The dead were counted. Yet in every corner of every ship, the words repeated like a curse none could forget. Terran borders are forbidden. News of the defeat spread across the galaxy like fire in dry grass. In the marketplaces of alien worlds, merchants whispered of it with wide eyes. Soldiers in distant garrisons repeated the story in hushed voices. The mighty empire, which had crushed countless civilizations, had been struck down by a single Terran ship. For the conquered races, there was a strange kind of hope in the tale. If even one ship of the mysterious humans could humiliate the Empire, then perhaps the galaxy was not as helpless as it seemed. For the Empire itself, however, the news was poison. The Emperor listened to the reports in his golden throne hall, surrounded by trembling advisors. He sat tall, clad in robes woven with threads of starlight, his crown heavy with jewels. His eyes burned with fury as he heard the truth. Dozens of his warships destroyed, admirals humiliated, and his proud fleet driven back by a lone human vessel. How dare they? The Emperor roared. His voice echoed through the marble hall, shaking the very air. How dare these primitives resist the Empire? One advisor, braver than the rest, lowered his head and whispered, "Your Majesty, perhaps the warnings were true. Perhaps the Terrans are not." The Emperor's staff struck the floor with a thunderous crack. Guards raised their weapons. The advisor fell silent at once, his courage shattered. "Legends," the Emperor spat. "Superstition. Tales to frighten fools. There is no enemy greater than the Empire. There never has been. There never will be." The hall fell silent. No one dared speak further. The Emperor rose from his throne, his voice filled with pride and fire. "I will not allow ghosts and shadows to shame me. If one ship dare stand against us, then I will send 1,000. If 1,000 fall, I will send 10,000 more. I am the Emperor of the galaxy. No border is forbidden to me." His generals bowed deeply, though their hearts were heavy with doubt. Orders were given. Across the Empire, fleets gathered. Not hundreds this time, but thousands. Every shipyard burned with activity. Every dockyard overflowed with soldiers. It was the greatest armada the galaxy had ever seen. Some whispered that the Emperor was mad. Others believed his pride blinded him. But none dared speak aloud. His will was law, and to question him was death. As the fleet prepared, conquered species across the galaxy watched with silent fear. They remembered the whispers, the warnings passed down for centuries. "Do not cross into Terran space." Now those words seemed more like prophecy than myth. On Terra itself, humans listened too. They had seen the Empire's arrogance. They had given their warning. They knew what would come next. And so, deep within their hidden worlds and secret shipyards, they prepared. But the Empire saw only weakness. "Look at them," one admiral boasted as the new fleet assembled. "They hide in shadows. They strike from the dark. Cowards with clever tricks. This time we will burn their worlds and erase their name from history." The Emperor nodded with satisfaction. His pride swelled at the sight of the Grand Armada. Thousands of ships lined in perfect formation, engines glowing like stars. It was a symbol of his power, a message to the galaxy. No one could defy him. Yet beneath the pride, beneath the shining banners and roaring engines, fear lingered. Every soldier remembered the wreckage left behind by one Terran ship. Every officer remembered the voice that had warned them. But pride is louder than fear. The Emperor raised his hand, and with a single command, the greatest fleet in Imperial history began its march into the Forbidden Stars. The galaxy watched. Some prayed, some waited. Some smiled quietly, knowing what the Emperor refused to see. For once pride blinds a ruler. His fall is only a matter of time, and the humans were waiting. The Emperor's armada was a sight of terror. Thousands of Imperial warships spread like a burning sea across the black of space. Their banners glowed gold, their weapons armed, their engines roaring like thunder. It was the largest force the galaxy had ever seen, and it moved with one purpose: to break the Terran borders. At first, the invasion felt like triumph. The fleet swept through the first line of systems, and what they found seemed to prove the Emperor right. Empty outposts, deserted mining colonies, silent moons. The humans had left nothing behind but ruins and shadows. Admirals boasted loudly, sending messages to one another across the fleet. "Where are these mighty Terrans?" One sneered. "They hide like cowards," another laughed. "This will be easier than crushing insects." But the soldiers who manned the lower decks felt no joy. The silence of those abandoned worlds did not feel like victory. It felt like warning. The emptiness was too perfect, too clean. Every planet they took seemed left behind on purpose, as if the humans had already decided to give it up. And then the shadows began to move. It started small. A supply ship vanished without a trace. An escort patrol went out to investigate and never returned. A listening post detected strange signals, too fast and sharp to track, then went silent forever. At first, the admirals ignored it. They told themselves it was nothing. They ordered the fleet to press deeper, but the losses grew. One by one, ships disappeared. Fragments of wreckage floated in the dark, burned and torn. The Empire's proud armada was being eaten alive from the edges. Then came the first real strike. A convoy of fuel tankers, guarded by a dozen cruisers, was ambushed at the edge of a gas giant. Out of the shadows came Terran ships, sleek, black, and terrifyingly fast. They darted through the convoy like hunters in a forest. The Imperial cruisers opened fire, but the Terran vessels moved with impossible precision, dodging blasts and striking back with weapons no one had ever seen. Within minutes, the entire convoy was gone. The tankers exploded in fire and their escorts drifted as burning wrecks. Before vanishing, the Terran sent a message across all frequencies. "You were warned. Terran borders are forbidden." The words rang through every Imperial ship. Admirals tried to laugh it off, but their voices shook. Soldiers whispered prayers. Fear was spreading, quiet but unstoppable. The Emperor, watching from his distant throne, raged at the reports. "Cowards! Shadows! Hunt them down!" he commanded. But the Terrans could not be hunted. They struck where the Empire was weakest and then disappeared into the void. They severed supply lines, cut communications, and destroyed fuel depots. The mighty fleet, so powerful in open battle, was bleeding slowly, piece by piece. It was war, in the shadows, and the humans knew every shadow by heart. For the first time, Imperial admirals began to argue. Some demanded to turn back, to regroup, to seek another path. Others shouted that retreat would bring shame worse than death. Their voices clashed in the command halls, while outside their ships burned one by one. The soldiers, far below, began to understand the truth. This was not weakness, this was not cowardice. This was preparation. The Terrans were letting the Empire march deeper, cutting them off from safety, surrounding them without ever showing the full strength of their hand. It was a silence that spoke, louder than any battle. The storm was coming, and when it broke, the galaxy would remember forever. The shadows had grown teeth. The Emperor's armada pressed deeper into Terran space, but every step forward was met with fire. The Terrans no longer struck with single ships. They came in hunting packs, squadrons of sleek vessels that moved like living storms. Imperial fleets that had once crushed empires found themselves torn apart piece by piece. At the edge of a dying star, an Imperial battle group of 30 warships faced what they believed was only a handful of Terran craft. Within minutes, 20 of their ships were gone. Terran weapons sliced through shields as though they were made of paper. Their rail cannons fired solid slugs at speeds that ripped battleships in half. Their swarms of drones fell like black rain, overwhelming defenses in waves. The survivors fled into the dark, but not far. The Terrans hunted them down. Not one returned. The galaxy began to whisper louder. Across conquered worlds, slaves of the Empire secretly cheered. The Terrans were not myths. They were real, and they were fighting back. They were the one enemy the Empire could not bend, the one people who would not kneel. But the true terror of the Terrans was not only their weapons, it was their spirit. Imperial soldiers reported it again and again. The humans never surrendered. Even when their ships were crippled, they fought to the last breath. Escape pods did not flee into the dark. They rammed themselves into Imperial hulls, detonating in desperate defiance. On one occupied moon, the Empire landed troops to establish a base. They expected frightened civilians. Instead, they found entire towns armed with weapons of their own making. Farmers fought beside engineers. Children carried messages for fighters in the hills. The battle was not won by the Empire. It was drowned in blood, and not a single human surrendered. Admirals began to understand the truth. The humans were not fighting for conquest. They were not fighting for glory. They were fighting for survival, for their homes, their children, and the skies of Terra. And that kind of fight could not be broken. One Imperial officer wrote in his final report before his ship was lost, "They fight as if every battle is the last. They fight as if the stars themselves are watching. If the Emperor does not understand this, we are already doomed." Still, the Emperor raged. He demanded more. He ordered the fleets forward. He promised that humanity would be broken under his heel. But the deeper the Armada went, the more the Terrans revealed their fury. At the twin worlds of Kale and Mira, the humans unleashed weapons that bent the rules of war. Great cannons hidden on asteroids fired projectiles the size of mountains, tearing Imperial dreadnoughts to shreds. At the gas giant of Verdun, swarms of human drones filled the skies, blotting out the light, consuming entire cruisers in storms of metal teeth. And always, always, came the message across every Imperial channel. You were warned. Terran borders are forbidden. The soldiers of the Empire began to whisper those words like a curse. Some repeated them in fear, some repeated them in awe. For the first time in centuries, the Empire felt powerless. But the Emperor, blinded by pride, refused to see the truth. He looked only at the heart of Terran space, at the shining world the humans called Earth. His orders were final. March forward, burn their home, erase their name. And so, the largest fleet in history pushed toward Sol. But the humans had been waiting, and when the storm broke, the galaxy would never forget it. The Emperor's Grand Armada reached the edge of Sol, the home system of humanity. It was a sight of unmatched power, thousands of Imperial warships filling the dark, their engines burning like suns, their weapons armed and ready. To the Emperor, it was proof of his greatness. To the galaxy, it was a storm of death. But the humans were ready. For centuries they had prepared, not for conquest, but for this very day. Deep beneath the frozen moons of Jupiter, hidden shipyards awoke. From the shadows of Saturn's rings, fleets emerged like phantoms. On the far side of Earth's moon, war machines older than the Empire itself rose from secret docks. The silence ended. Humanity revealed its hand. A tide of Terran ships poured into the system. Not hundreds, not thousands, millions. Their hulls were black and sharp, their engines blazing cold blue. They moved with the precision of hunters and the fury of survivors. The first clash came near Neptune. The leading edge of the Imperial Armada met the Terran vanguard. The Empire expected an easy slaughter. Instead, they found death. Terran ships cut through their formations, rail cannons shattering dreadnoughts, swarms of drones tearing apart cruisers like wolves on prey. The battle turned into chaos within minutes. But that was only the beginning. As the Imperials pushed inward, more Terran fleets struck from hiding places, from asteroid belts, from gas giant moons, from stations cloaked in silence. Every step toward Earth was paid for in oceans of blood. The Emperor watched from his massive flagship, fury burning in his eyes. "Press forward," he shouted. "Break them. Earth will burn." And so the fleets clashed in the skies of Mars. In crimson light, the greatest battle in galactic history unfolded. Terran defenses turned the red planet into a fortress. Cannons buried in its surface fired projectiles so massive they cracked Imperial battleships in half. Orbital platforms unleashed storms of missiles that blotted out the stars. And through the chaos, human fleets struck like lightning, vanishing into shadows and returning with deadly precision. Imperial admirals tried every strategy: tight formations, scattered waves, direct assaults. Nothing worked. The humans had planned for it all. Hours turned to days. The black of space was littered with wreckage, glowing with fire. Millions of soldiers screamed, fought, and died. Still, the Emperor refused to accept defeat. On the third day, the Armada reached Earth's orbit. The blue planet glowed below, calm and beautiful in the midst of war. The Emperor smiled. "At last," he whispered, "their heart will break." But he was wrong. From behind the Earth's moon came humanity's final defense. Titans of steel, colossal, warships built in secret, each larger than the Emperor's greatest dreadnought. They had slept for centuries waiting for this moment. Now they awoke. Their cannons roared, and with each shot, Imperial ships vanished in fire. Shields shattered. Engines died. Entire fleets crumbled under their assault. The Emperor's smile faded. Terran ships swarmed his flagship. His guards trembled as alarms screamed. His final transmission was heard across both fleets, a roar of rage and disbelief, and then silence. The Emperor's flagship exploded in a storm of light, its fragments scattering into the void. The Armada was broken, leaderless, surrounded, cut off from retreat. The remaining Imperial ships tried to flee, but the humans gave no mercy. Every vessel that crossed their border was hunted down. Every survivor was silenced. When the fire finally faded, the greatest fleet in galactic history was gone. Not one Imperial warship remained. The galaxy watched in awe and terror. The impossible had happened. The Empire's pride had been shattered. And in the quiet after the storm, only one truth remained, spoken by every survivor, whispered across every world. Terran borders are forbidden. The war was over. The wreckage of the Emperor's armada drifted in silence, scattered across the skies of Sol like broken bones. Thousands of Imperial ships, once proud, once unstoppable, were now nothing but twisted metal, their lights extinguished forever. The blue earth turned quietly below, untouched by enemy fire, still shining with the calm beauty of oceans and clouds. For the first time in living memory, the Empire had been defeated. Not just defeated, shattered. Across the galaxy, the news spread faster than light. On worlds enslaved by the Empire, whispers rose like a storm. Merchants told the story in crowded markets. Children repeated the words in quiet corners. Soldiers, long broken by Imperial chains, lifted their heads with new hope. The humans did it, they said. The Terrans fought back, the Terrans won. For many it felt like a dream. The Empire, which had seemed eternal, had met an enemy it could not conquer. And that enemy was not vast in number, nor ancient beyond measure. They were humans, a species once dismissed as myth and shadow. The conquered races began to see the truth. The humans had not fought for glory, nor for conquest. They fought for survival, for their homes, for their children. Their strength did not come from ambition, it came from love. Love of life, love of freedom, love of the sky that was theirs alone. But in the halls of the Empire, the story was different. The Emperor was gone, his flagship destroyed, his voice silenced forever. The throne stood empty, and fear filled the marble corridors of his palace. Generals who once boasted now trembled. Advisors whispered of rebellion. The citizens who had once praised their ruler as invincible now looked to the stars with dread. If the Terrans can destroy the Emperor's greatest fleet, they whispered, what chance do we have? Fear of Terra became a new law of the galaxy. On Imperial maps, their borders were drawn darker than before, and the word forbidden was etched deeper into every star chart. No admiral, no soldier, no merchant dared cross it again. The lesson was clear. Terran borders were sacred, but humanity did not celebrate with parades. They did not build statues of victory or sing songs of conquest. Instead, they buried their dead. They gathered the ashes of soldiers who had fought with courage and sorrow. They wept for every ship lost, every family broken, every life given, to keep their world free. Because the humans knew the cost of survival. They had seen war's face too clearly to ever find joy in it, and yet there was pride, quiet, steady pride. They had stood against the greatest power in the galaxy, and they had not broken. They had defended their borders, their home, their very name. From that day on, when alien children asked their elders why the maps marked Terra as forbidden, they were told the story. They were told of the Emperor's arrogance. They were told of the lone Terran ship that warned the fleet. They were told of the armada that vanished in Sol, and they were told of the voice that echoed through the stars. You were warned. Terran borders are forbidden. Generations later, the memory still lived. Admirals studied it as a lesson in humility. Leaders remembered it as a warning against pride. And the common people of the galaxy spoke the words with awe, half in fear and half in respect. Because in the end, the truth was simple. The galaxy was vast, and the Empire mighty. But even the greatest power must know its limits. And at the edge of those limits stood Terra, silent, watchful, unyielding. The humans did not seek conquest. They did not hunger for thrones or crowns. They asked only for what was theirs. But for any who tried to take it, the price was clear. For Terran borders were forbidden, and the galaxy had learned it the hard way.